All right, moving on through the leadership styles. So we've already covered the climber and the conserver. Next is the zealot. So the zealot, as you can see on the slide, is someone who's energetic, someone who loves innovation, but someone who thinks they know best. So these people can be kind of egotistical, but they really are all about trying the next new thing. This is a leadership style I've seen sometimes in myself, where I get really passionate about something, I get really energetic about something, and I start just talking really loud and really fast, and I start doing all of these crazy things because I love it so much. Some of you have probably already seen those kinds of things in my class. And of course, yeah, sometimes I even get cocky about, well, yeah, I think I know best. So, how is it that you work with someone like this as you start to recognize, well, what are their passions? What is it that they really care about? And how can you make it seem like the project that you are working on fits that passion and that they are going to be better off, in fact, that it is in their interest to help you with your project and help pursue it. Um, and sometimes that takes a little bit of mental gymnastics. But if that's the kind of person you're working with, that's the kind of thing you got to do. All right, the next is the advocate, the perfect social worker, right? This is someone who is dedicated to the ideals of the agency and their clients. Someone who's just very much into, you know what, this is the agency we work for, these are our values, this is what we care about, this is what drives us, and they take it on as though we're part of themselves. So they can be very driven people, they can be very ethical, very thoughtful people. But of course, one of the problems that the advocates might have is that they tend to narrow their perspective through a particular lens. They don't often have as much flexibility in terms of how they think about things. In any case, when you work with an advocate, one of the things that you're going to want to do is make sure that you can sell the project that you're working on in terms of how it is going to benefit the clients or how it's going to benefit the agency by serving its ideals. And then finally is the statesperson. The statesperson is kind of a politician type. This is the kind of person who is really all about trying to help the well-being of society, and they're all about the big ideas, but they're not necessarily all that good with the details. You'll find some leaders that are like this. They're like, all right, this is the direction that we're going to go in our practice. This is the direction we want our community to go in. This is the direction we want our world to go in, however it is, or whatever it is that they're in charge of. But in the end, they're going to say, well, I've just given you the direction. I expect you guys to work it out. I'm sure some of you have seen leaders like this as well. One of my favorite bosses I ever had was like this. She's like, I'm a big idea person, not so much on the details. They will tend to surround themselves with detail-oriented people, assistants, secretaries, those kinds of people. When you work with the statesperson, getting to know those people that are taking care of the details is going to be essential to your work. They are actually going to have a massive influence of power. So make sure that you know who those people are, that you make good relations with them, and that you keep them in mind when trying to influence the state person. The state person depends on the people that can take care of the details. They can't do anything without those people. So they listen to them. Those are the ones that you want on your side. Okay, again, the point of this is as you're going through the Imagine model is to recognize who your allies are and what kind of leadership issues that you have to consider as you work with them, or what kind of leadership style you tend to take on in whatever it is that you're trying to do. Each of them, of course, are going to have their strengths and weaknesses. What can you do about it? Just do your best, but get to know kind of the way that people lead, and that helps you understand some of their own motivations, which can be hugely influential in influencing them. All right, let's move on through the Imagine model. All right, so the A in Imagine stands for identifying your assets. So this is where you would start looking at what kind of strengths you have. So you pull out your good old strengths theory, and you start looking at, all right, is there money available? Have people dedicated time and energy to this kind of thing? Do you have people that are actually on your side? One of the things Alinsky is known for saying is the power goes to two poles, those that have the money or those that have the people. Well, guess what? You're in social work, you're probably not going to be one of the ones with the money. You're probably going to be one of the ones with the people. So, do you have enough people that can actually make enough of a stink to make your project happen? So start identifying who those are, start identifying space even. Where is it that you are going to actually meet? What is it that you are actually, where do you go? Where are you going to organize demonstrations, or where are you going to hold activities? All of those things matter. So you got to kind of keep those things in mind. So all of the things, all of these different little pieces that you're going to need to set up your projects and make them work. Those are your assets. Next, specify goals, objectives, and action steps to attain them. So this is where you would pull out a PERT chart. Now a PERT chart is, there is a video that I have attached from YouTube that covers the basic ideas of what a PERT chart and a NAT chart are. So essentially what you are looking at is who is going to do what by when, and basically you put out a kind of to-do list that is organized by date and by person and who is going to do what by when. One of the things that you will have to do for this paper is create such a chart. This chart should have ordered tasks, time frames, again, who's doing what by when, what are essential steps that have to happen before next steps can happen, and if potential steps don't happen, what are alternative pathways that you can go through. I do encourage you to watch the video that I've provided and linked onto our Canvas module to look through some of the ways that you can put together a PERT chart. I do expect to see something like this, some sort of graph, some sort of matrix, whatever it is that you got to do. I expect to see that in your project. So make sure that you have that covered. All right. The next is implement the plan. Essentially, make sure that it happens, monitor who is doing what, and communicate. For your paper, in this part, because essentially this is the part that just says, well, go do it. This is where you would write down like who is taking on what role, who is going to be supervising who's going to keep communication with who, under what circumstances will you be communicating with stakeholders, under what circumstances would you not communicate with stakeholders, how frequently will you meet to make sure that things are moving along, what kind of tools will you use. That's what you would put in here in implementing the plan. How is it that you're actually going to do it? Okay, the N, neutralize opposition. And believe me, it's going to be there. In the prepare model, in those videos, I had mentioned a student that lost her practicum because she didn't think through her potential risks that could go along with performing the actual project. So in this, primarily, you have to make sure that your stakeholders are well informed about what you are doing, where, and when. Anticipate that there will be unanticipated problems. We're going to get into Murphy's Law, which is going to have a huge impact on all of your projects because it always does. So yeah, you have to anticipate unanticipated problems, and then you have to see, well, are there people that would actually try to make this project not work? Or are there things or are there movements that would go against your project success, that would not like to see you successful? Are there opposing agencies? I mean, there's all kinds of things that it could be. The point is you've really got to identify who are your potential oppositions, and then you have to start taking them on one at a time. Obviously, your social workers, your first bet is going to be, it's like, let's collaborate, right? Let's work together. Let's try to establish some sort of common ground. Let's be honest about our feelings and start talking to them about, well, what are the steps that you're going to do? How can they benefit from being on your side? Or how do they lose by not being on your side? That's what is meant by the blunt assault there. Now, it's basically just ensuring that you are very, very clear in your communication and that you try to bring those people who might oppose you on board as well as possible. In your paper, I want you to make sure that you really think about who might oppose you and how is it that you're going to address them. Also, I want you to really think about in your paper having in this part contingency plans. What will you do in the case of catastrophic failure? What if there are certain points in your project that if not done, your project simply will fail? What backup plans do you have? Those have to be put in here in the neutralize opposition. So the next couple of slides are about some of the tools that you might use to either persuade or pressure people that might be in opposition to what you're doing. Persuasion is obviously the more gentle of the approaches. Pressuring might be much more of an Alinsky-esque type of intervention. So this first one is going to seem and feel much more appropriate, and the next one is not going to feel as good or appropriate. But the important part of that is that you recognize that those are skills that you use when all other skills have failed. So just be willing to use them if you have to, and remember that you can, even if you don't like to, and even if you don't want to. So let's look at persuasion. When you need to persuade people, obviously education is key. We need to make sure that people are really informed about what it is that they're supporting and why. Look at different options. Are there ways that might work better? Be willing to even listen to new ideas if you need to. Talk to the people that can make those kinds of decisions and those kinds of suggestions and get feedback. That's the kind of thing that helps people feel like they're contributing to this project as well. Ask if a trial change is possible. If you're trying to change some sort of policy or some sort of procedure or common behavior, it's like, hey, let's just see if we can, let's see what happens if we change it. If all of a sudden people don't have to do this paperwork, does the world end? I mean, obviously the world won't end over any paperwork, even if it feels like it at times. But those kinds of things, giving it a test, is sometimes a really good way not only to test your own ideas, but it's a great way to persuade other people as well. Because if they see that it works under trial circumstances, then hopefully it will work under much more scaled up circumstances. Suggest a committee be formed to discuss the plan. This is assuming that you're working in a large structured organization. Creatively identify how the systems can increase communication. Creativity is always a wonderful thing in the workplace and a wonderful thing in what you're in whatever it is that you're working on. So just how can we keep people together and on task? Appeal to the decision maker's sense of fairness. By supporting this project, you're fair to me and you're fair to everyone else. However it is that you have to approach that. Develop rational arguments to support your plan. Hopefully at this point that's already done, but make sure that you have them, and then specify negative consequences of not acting. to decision makers. Make sure that they know what's going to happen if they don't support you.